I already saw some of this yesterday because I tuned into Farfa's stream and they had Hakuna Matata on. But I also missed some of it. Like, I didn't see the entire thing. And I also wanted to just give some exposure to Hakuna Matata because I'm a big fan of their content. I'm a massive fan of their content, so I think it's just cool to give them a little watch on stream every once in a while. So yeah, let's
Hey guys,
let's watch this. This is a survey just about like the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's like they almost got 2,000 players to respond to this and answer different questions about the current state of the game and all kind of other stuff. I don't know what's all in here. But yeah, it's I think it's very interesting. Let me go to the other side because apparently they're going to be chilling in the right corner.
so by the time you're watching this video, I probably already presented the results on Farfa's subathon, but for those of you that missed it, basically what I did was I surveyed players in the Yu-Gi-Oh community just so we can learn more about us. And so essentially 1,600 players responded, so a huge thanks to all of you who participated, who shared the survey, and
also we're 9 subs away from the next sub goal, so if you want to cheer me up and listen to a little remix situation, you know, now is the time. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely follow me on Twitter to make sure that you don't miss out on any future surveys. And so before we continue, big thanks to my sponsors as always, links and discount codes in the description below for Yu-Gi-Oh singles and Yu-Gi-Oh supplies. So let's just get right into the demographic part of the question, starting with the age. And so for the most part, at least among the players that responded to this survey, they were in the 19 to 24 and
I'm gonna have to cover your face, my bad, but we need to see those.
25 to 29 age group for the most part. It's really not surprising. This is sort of reflects the age where you kind of gain financial independence, right, after high school. So not too surprising. What I think is interesting, that 30 to 39 age group, which is where I belong, I think that portion will probably start increasing over time, right, kind of, because if you think about, you know, the anime came around, I think around 2002. That's when I was like a little kid, and you know, that demographic, that cohort definitely gonna start to age out and enter that
40 plus players. Yep. I mean, I personally think it's incredibly cool if whenever I see someone who's like 40 or older or 50 or older at a tournament. I think it's like, yes, it started out as like a hobby for children mostly, but I think it's pretty cool that like even old people getting into, because honestly, let's face it. Okay, let's face it, chat. Everyone knows that this game is based on an anime that was mostly consumed by kids, but the game itself is far gone from a kid's game, right? It's like it's not even very suitable for small children because it's like way too complicated.
30 plus age group. In terms of, you know, gender identity that you most identify with, mostly male, again, probably not too surprising, but 87%. When I've been doing this like the last 2 years prior to this, I believe this was actually in the very high 90s. So, you know, more diversity is always great.
Yep.
Now let's cover the country of residence, and I'm only going to just cover the top 5. There's of course a lot of people from different countries around the world that responded, which is really cool. So essentially USA was number 1. Not too surprising as well, just because especially my YouTube audience.
This is crazy, right? Because the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game is technically only being, it's the USA format, right? According to MBT. So it's nice to see that other human beings outside of the USA are taking part in the TCG, which is technically outside of their region, right? Kind of crazy.
It's actually about half are from USA, I believe. UK, Germany, some European influence, and Canada, where I belong. And then Poland. So that's also interesting. Definitely don't have that in my YouTube analytics in terms of audience, but definitely really appreciate all of you across the world responding to this survey. So in terms of how players categorize themselves as a player, 43% being casual, but, you know, 33% being semi-competitive, which essentially kind of reflects, you know, at least participate.
One caveat when it comes to the surveys by Hakuna Matata, I think it's something that should be said, is that the data is, I think, somewhat skewed a little bit by his audience, right? The people that he reaches with those surveys, I think are more likely to be competitive. I think in reality, if you take the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community, I think there is more than 42% casuals. It's just that a lot of those casuals he doesn't reach with the survey, right? He does get it in others. He is not only his followers, right, that this is about, but like still the people that you ask, I would argue the following of almost any content creator is like mostly people that try to take the game a little bit more seriously, right? Unless he asked someone like maybe, I don't know, Team Samurai X1 or someone. If someone like that would would send this to all of their followers, then maybe we would get a little bit more casuals into the mix. But I think for like most of the people that this survey reached, I think this is a little bit skewed towards the people that try to take this game at least a little bit more competitive. You call Sam a casual? No, but like it's not a secret that Sam's audience and content is more catered towards, you know, fans of the anime and stuff. It's also not even a burn or anything. It's completely fine to make content for the casual people. People always take casual as an insult, which I think is a super toxic thing to use that as an insult, because it's completely fine to be a casual at anything. It's a completely fine thing to do anything casually. How the hell is anything wrong with that? You don't have to try hard min-max every single thing in your life, dude. Like, it's not an insult at all. It's completely fine to do something and enjoy it casually. Literally nothing wrong with that.
At local level events, but just probably not really regional level events or higher. And then competitive, of course, you know, at least regional level events or higher that they participate in. And then like 1% that's considered non-player, so those could be considered as, you know, let's say like vendors or maybe artists, I'm not sure. But you know, I think this is actually kind of an important breakdown to take into consideration for all the results moving forward in this video, just because, you know, we do have a little bit more competitive players that responded than likely the actual Yu-Gi-Oh population, where there's probably
he's actually saying
a lot more casual players if you were to somehow survey like the entire Yu-Gi-Oh population. Now, in terms of, you know, the primary reason that led you to decide to Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, almost half said that it was because of from watching the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. I think that's how a lot of us kind of grew up with that, and then it really got us into it. Of course, if you were like me, you know, when the Yu-Gi-Oh anime first came out and you were a kid, you know, the rules were definitely not the rules that actually, you know, encompasses that trading card game. It was definitely has some really wonky rulings, but it was still really fun nonetheless. Watching friends play the game or seeing Yu-Gi-Oh content online, for example, that's a very big one in the more modern era. Or maybe, you know, they were already playing a different TCG and they wanted to try something new. To be honest with you, this survey question, the response choices I had, I already knew. It was pretty limited. I wish I could have thought of more, because we did have quite a bit in the other section. A lot of people actually just said that they were just bored and they decided to play it. That was one of the common reasons that were mentioned in the other section. So, you know what, interesting nonetheless, but I'm really happy to see how people kind of got into this game. In terms of what other TCGs they do play, of course, more than half actually said they don't play any other TCGs. I mean, to be fair, I think, you know, it is pretty...
It's very common for people to only really play one TCG. I personally see myself as an enjoyer of card games in general, which might surprise some of you, because I'm obviously mostly making content for Yu-Gi-Oh, or like only making content for Yu-Gi-Oh. But I really enjoy all kinds of card games. I just never really have the time to play more than one at the same level, right? I'm the type of person, I really like to get into a card game, you know, all or nothing. I'm the type of person I like to min-max, right? But I have played most of the games on this list, except for I haven't played Vanguard, I haven't played Weiss Schwarz, and that's it. Everything else I've played.
Pretty hard to invest in multiple card games at once, not only the cost but also just the time. But if they did play any other TCGs, you know, most looks like Magic, Pokemon again, which is pretty common, or rather makes sense, because these are some of the most...
You played Lorcana? Yeah, I played Lorcana. I have like almost all the cards laying around somewhere.
Common TCGs in the game right now. Disney Lorcana is kind of new, from my understanding.
Magic,
it's pretty limited.
Magic. I played very briefly in like back in the day, and now I picked, because I'm a very big Lord of the Rings fan. I picked up the Lord of the Rings Commander decks, but I haven't actually played with them yet. I have the decks, but I haven't found 4 people to play the Commander decks yet, but I have those. Pokemon I played a little bit back in the day at tournaments as well. Digimon I played a very good amount with my fiance, because she was a huge Digimon fan as a kid. And so when that game, when the modern card game dropped for Digimon, we actually went to a couple tournaments and stuff like that and did pretty well. Even at those, but we don't play much anymore. It was during like BT5, BT6 we played a lot, but nowadays we don't really anymore, which is kind of sad. And now we're playing a little bit of Lorcana together. Yeah, Hearthstone I played a lot back in the day. Hearthstone, dude, 2016, I think it's 2015, 16, 17, I played a lot of Hearthstone. And then I also played a lot of Runeterra during COVID. That's not even on here, but Runeterra is also a sick card game.
Supply right now and also quite expensive, but I'm sure that will increase. I thought One Piece would be a little higher because I thought it was actually like exploding in terms of popularity. But you know what? I think this, for the most part, pretty interesting. All the other TCGs that players are using.
Jero, thank you for the full year. Appreciate that.
Let's just cover some of the questions related to competitive play in terms of, you know, how often do you actually participate in these official tournaments by Konami? So 39% actually said they don't participate at all. But among those that do participate, you do see that, you know, most are actually.
I mean, this makes sense when you had like also 39 people that 39% that said they are casuals, right? So that like that probably correlates to they don't go to tournaments, or like at least not very frequently. I personally, unfortunately, am in the left category. I go to tournaments on average less than once per week, which is, I wish I could go more often. Like last week, going to locals was very fun for me, but I just don't have a locals that's close and nearby. Which I do miss that a lot. Like one of my favorite memories from playing Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid is just like going to locals very, very frequently. I think that's just such a fun thing to do, right? Does locals count? Yeah, locals are, well, most locals are officially sanctioned Konami tournaments, like OTS tournaments, yes. But locals to me is not that much about, you know, like practicing or whatever. It's just about the enjoyment of the game, right? Like it's, I do, like, for example, I played Salamangreat last week at locals, which is a deck that I would have probably never played if it was a regional or a YCS or whatever, but I still like enjoyed it a lot because it was like locals is kind of like a way to play Yu-Gi-Oh, but like without pressure at all, which is very, to me, feels very good every once in a while. So I wish I could go more often, but it's just like, it's 1.5 hours, you know? To the locals I go to, if I go to, is Frankfurt. Do Challenger Cups count? I guess
they would, like less than one or one per week. Definitely not too many grinders out there in terms of, you know, 3+ per week. Now, in terms of, you know, the highest level of achievements in competitive play, 35% saying they do not participate. Kind of weird because 39% said they don't participate in that previous question. Anyways, you're bound to see those inconsistent results in surveys. You know,
I mean, no, that can make sense because currently 39% of them are not like regularly participating, but it could be that they once have top locals, but they don't go to locals anymore or something. That can change, right? But yeah. Where's Worlds Win, by the way? Where's that? Where's my category? Okay, so
most have like up to, you know, local top at best, which makes sense. That's kind of like the most common outcome, really. Regional tops get a little confusing, so, you know, a lot of people get the terminology mixed up, and it might also actually depend on the area, perhaps. Like in North America, for example, in regional events, you have, you know, if you say you top the regional, that means top 8. But at the same time, usually up to like, let's say top 48 or top 32, you can also get an invite to the North American World Championship qualifier, which is not topping a regional, but just means you at least earned an invite at a regional. So I try to distinguish that in the survey question. I'm not sure if everyone really understood that, but at the same time, you know, you kind of see like 8.5% got up to an invite only, and then almost 10% getting a regional top 8. And then, you know, some national top, YCS top, obviously a very small proportion of people world participant, which is really cool that they actually participate in the survey. Now, in terms of, you know, what players thought of remote duel tops, because this can definitely be a bit of a controversial topic, but you know what, a little over 70% actually believe that they still count as a remote,
still that controversial?
Still count as a premier event top, for example, but perhaps, you know.
What are your thoughts on remote duel tops compared to in-person event tops? I believe they are the equivalent to an in-person event top. I believe they are less impressive than in-person event top, but still count. I do not believe they count as a top. No opinion on remote duel tops. Okay. I didn't know this was a big debate. I personally would say I'm mostly in the camp of the second thingy. Like, I do think it's a very respectable thing to I mean, still, it's like 9 or 10 round tournaments or whatever. It just tends to be, and it's not really about me having any like not trusting the people that do well at remote events. It's not that. It's just the fact that I think most of the time they are smaller. And a lot of the times it's also that, at least a lot of the people that I know, a lot of the very competitive players, they don't play in them that often, right? It's not like most most or all of the competitive players will be at the in-person YCSs, but not all of them have a priority for like, I'm gonna play this remote event, right? Like some of them do, but I think the density of high-level players is a little bit lower, as well as the playing field is just a little bit smaller, which by default just makes them a little bit easier, I think. It doesn't mean that they are easy and don't count, but I do think they are, you know, it's just less rounds, and the density of really good players is just slightly lower, so I think that makes them a little bit less impressive. But the good thing about these kind of questions is that, well, theoretically, you don't have to freaking like care that there's an ongoing debate on, because this is only like the only people that this really affects is people that have a remote top and they want other people to respect it, and they are butthurt about the fact that it's not getting respected or whatever, right? And it's like it's affecting your self-worth of like, oh, it's not a real top and whatnot. And it's like, if you can get over that, right? I feel like it's most of the time it's just an issue you have with your own self-worth. It's like you know, this entire discussion I think is kind of pointless of what counts as a top and what does not count as a top. It's like it shouldn't define your self-worth of as a human being, as like how many events have you topped, how many events have you won, whatever. I just don't think it's a very healthy discussion to begin with, right? It's like it's okay to be proud of your achievements, but then you don't need other people to tell you what's an achievement and what's not. If it's an achievement for you, if you experienced it as a very hard thing, right? Topping a remote event or topping whatever event or winning whatever event, if it's an accomplishment to you, then you don't need to like let other people decide on what counts and what doesn't count. If it counts for you, then it's count. Be proud of it. Doesn't matter what other people say about it.
40% feeling that they're not as impressive as an in-person event top, with a small percent, 4% rather, thinking that they don't count at all. Now, ultimately, in my view, I don't think it's up to any of us to decide whether someone else's remote duel top counts or not. You know, if it counts to them, it counts to them. That's what matters most. Now, that's
easy to say if you have like 830 tops. You see, you say that, but I don't experience it like that, because even I constantly have this, you know, of like comparing myself to other people and whatnot. And especially like a couple years ago, I would constantly go about as like, oh my, like other people have won more YCSs than I have and whatnot. And it's so easy. It's so much easier and so much yeah, it's much easier to focus on the things that other people have done that you haven't done, as opposed to just being happy with what you have achieved and being proud of what you have achieved, right? And I think it's just a more healthy way to go about it. And it is something that even high-level players can struggle with. I can tell you that. That like people will constantly be like, oh, how did this person win a YCS, and so on and so forth, and it's just not a very I don't think it's a very healthy thing to do, and it's something that I've tried to work on over the years of like just instead of looking at what other people have achieved more than what I have achieved or whatever, it's just looking at the things that I've done and being proud of the things that I've done. And I don't think it has anything to do with you know, oh, you can only say that if you've reached a certain amount of things, you know. It's just everyone's achievements matter, especially to themselves. They should, right? And even if it's something as simple as winning your first locals or winning your first regional or even topping your first locals or topping your first regional, if that's something you've worked for and you've achieved it, then that's something to be proud of, right? And it doesn't really matter what other people say about it. And it also doesn't matter that other people have maybe done more than you, because it's like, you know, it's tough to voice all the things that I feel about this, but it's like I think it's a very toxic trait to begin with, to always compare yourself with other people as to like, oh, they've done this better than I have, or they've won more than I have, they've topped more than I have. Doesn't really matter, right? Just you make the best out of what you can do, and you're happy. You can be happy with that, right?
Cover some of the cost aspect of this game. So to play this game competitively, the players felt that, you know, it is very expensive. Or
I saw this on Farfa's stream yesterday. This was I tuned in for a little bit after at this point. Bro, who answered just right? Who saw the question, to play this game competitively, I believe the cost is, and they said just right. That's crazy. Like, dude, either they were memeing, maybe they were memeing, but like, look, I personally think that the game is definitely expensive. Whether it's too expensive or somewhat expensive, I guess that could depend on your financial situation. I don't think that the game needs to be dirt cheap, but I do think that there's inherently a problem with, especially my biggest gripe with Yu-Gi-Oh right now is the fact that like, it comes down to just very few cards actually that I have a problem with, because I think it's okay if a certain deck is expensive. I think that's like, okay, whatever, right? But it's like specific cards, mainly staples, that are arguably necessary to compete in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like right now it would be Triple Tactics Thrust and Pot of Prosperity. I think those type of cards, they should not have the price tag that they have right now. I think that is the most annoying part, is like telling everyone that wants to build pretty much any deck, right? Any freaking deck, that even if you're looking for a budget option, you're gonna have to make so many concessions and your deck is gonna be so suboptimal, right? I think a much better way would be to have staples available for much cheaper, and then have specific deck speaks let cards be more expensive, right? Not more expensive than what they are now, but like cards should have value. Konami should make money, right? Don't get me wrong. But I think staple cards should be on the lower end, and like deck cores of like strong decks should be what's more expensive, so that maybe it doesn't even change anything about like what the top tier level decks cost. Maybe the top decks still are expensive that way, right? But you can play a budget option with still most of the staples available, and that can definitely feel like a more viable option than when you have to play, like, when you're going for a budget option, you're probably already playing a worse deck, right? You're already playing, I don't know, Trap Tricks, right? You're already playing Trap Tricks, which is already in a hard spot in the format. But then if you already, and then on top of that, you don't have Prosperity and Thrust, you're just like double fucked, right? It's not a very good dynamic, I think. And it also creates a huge barrier of entry, because people are like, hey, I want to enter a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament for the first time, but I don't want to do terribly bad. Is there a budget option? And you just have to tell them, well, not really, because even the budget options need X or Y staple card that is currently 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks, right? And I think that's a huge barrier of entry. And it's kind of a problem, right? Because people do use that as an argument sometimes, and it is true that once you have acquired a lot of the staple cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, once you have a collection and you have your thrusts, talents, evenlies, imperms, well, these are not the evenlies and imperms are not huge expensive cards anymore, but they used to be, right? Ashes, same thing, used to start out as a very expensive card. Once you have those cards, it's like new set comes out, you only need to pick up the deck core. And that is usually cheap depending on what deck you're picking up, but most of the time it's reasonable. And you also have pretty much all the budget options available, right? If I have the Prosperities, the Thrusts, yada yada already in my collection, I can pick up a Trap Tricks deck for 10 bucks, right? It's very easy to pivot into a different deck just to try it out, right? You can pick up any deck pretty much for a lot less, right? This is true. But you have to realize that this is probably it should be the other way around, right? It should just be the other way around to have a lower barrier of entry. You should be able to pick up the staples for cheap, and then the specific deck cores, if you want to pick up an entirely new and top tier strategy, that should probably where the money is, right? That's my 2 cents on that. I think that'd be much better.
Somewhat expensive. Again,
also, this is why I wanted to watch this video on stream as well, because I think having a discussion about these things is very interesting. It's just like I like this kind of stuff.
I don't think I think people who say it's not expensive at all, that 0.1%, probably trolling. Realistically, this game has been rather expensive for quite a while, especially to play competitively. Has it gotten better or worse in the past year? I don't know if it has been really all that noticeable, but at the very least, it definitely hasn't gone noticeably better. Now, in terms of the level of concern on spending on this game,
why don't they sell products as cheap as OCG does? Okay, so this also always comes up, right? There's always this comparison to the OCG when we talk about card prices. And yes, the prices in the OCG are a lot more consumer friendly. I personally don't know what the reason is why we don't do it in the same way. Apparently, Konami thinks that it's either not possible to do it that way, or they think they can make more money if they do it the way they're doing it. Yeah, but I agree with you that it would be better that way. I'm just saying it's like an entirely different, it's an entirely different business model, right? It's an entirely different market. And the thing is, that's never gonna happen. 99% sure it's never gonna happen that they just say, yeah, okay, now we're doing it like the OCG, right? So instead of asking for them to fundamentally change everything, I think if you want to provide constructive criticism, I think it would be suggesting small changes into the right direction rather than just changing the entire system, like, in one day. So even though I agree with what you're saying, I don't think it's very constructive to just say, yeah, the entire thing should be completely different starting tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because it's just not realistic, so it doesn't really help, right?
12% saying
nothing has changed much. I don't think that's true, though. I do not think that nothing has changed if you look back a couple years. I do think, and this is, once again, maybe it's an unpopular opinion because it's not completely shitting on Konami. I do think some stuff has been improving. There's still cards where I think they fucked up, like Thrust. I think it was a major fuck up in terms of like the secret rare. But there's been a couple things, examples as well where they tried to make stuff not as expensive. Like they had a relatively aggressive reprint policy for a couple cards, like evenly Ash, Talents, and whatnot have been reprinted into the ground last year. Magnamut, even though it was an expensive super rare, but still it was a super rare, right? And that card could have gone crazy if it wasn't a super rare. Like I'm pretty sure they didn't aim for Magnamut to be a $20 card. That's why they made it a super rare. I think they tried to help us out there, but it was that. Like my two main concerns was really Thrust and Pot of Prosperity, which is like, I think those cards should have been lower rarity to begin with. Like those kind of staples, like also back in the day Ash Imperm. I don't think those cards should be secret rares. I really don't like that. It's just like, I understand why they're doing it. I really do. But I think they might make a lot of money off of it at first glance when they release a box and they make a card like that secret rare because it's a huge chase card. I get that. But I think in the long run, those kind of decisions actually hurt the game more than they help. Because it also, like, looking at cards like Imperm back in the day was, I think, an $80 secret. Ash was very expensive. For new players, I think these cards are these card prices for cards that you arguably need in almost any deck. I think that is really something that turns people away from this game when they look at a supposedly budget option and it still has cards that are worth this much money because you arguably just need them, right? And so, like, staple cards that you really need 3 of in a lot of decks, I think those cards going forward should just not be secret rares, period. Seeing the high number of uninformed takes that don't think about the overall game and market is painful. I get what you're saying. It's just like that. That is an issue that every company has to face, is that customers are not always evaluating all of your decisions with perfect knowledge of how the stuff works, right? It's like you need to manage expectations well, and you need to make decisions that even people that aren't super involved with this still can agree to, and still like it's this, because, like, yes, some people are not very informed about this type of stuff, but they are also allowed to be part of the community, right? And they will automatically still form an opinion. So it's also important to make them feel validated in their opinions.
Very concerning, and 36% saying not at all concerning, and somewhat in between for the two other levels of concern. Definitely understandable. It definitely can be a bit of an addicting game for sure, and just at least hopefully you are still taking care of yourself.
My level of concern on the amount of money I spent on this game is okay, very concerning. Look, if you've checked my Twitter this last weekend, you've seen hold up, let me show you what you have seen if you follow me on Twitter last weekend. It fits very well into this question. Very concerning, chat. Let me tell you, very concerning. Very concerning activities. They look nice though. Aren't they nice? God damn, they look nice. And very concerning though.
In terms of, taking care of your rent, utilities, rather than prioritizing Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, in terms of the amount of sealed product players purchased in the past month, looks like
they are near
players
mint,
actually did not spend anything at all. Now, some of you may be wondering, you're only asking for the past month, like what if it just happened to be a month where they barely spent anything, or they spent way too much compared to their usual spending, and that's fair. But whenever it comes to these kind of survey questions, the further you go back in terms of recall period, the more, the accuracy becomes a little bit more questionable, and it's very hard to recall accurately. And so I decided...
I will say... I would have never, I remember saying, I think I'm a hypocrite now, because I remember saying I would never own a card like that a couple of months ago. I will say winning Worlds has changed that situation a little bit, so I would have never done this in a normal circumstance. And I also traded for a lot of it. I gave away some of the expensive stuff that I had, like my Starlight Rare Lina. And some of my some other stuff that I still had. So I didn't actually pay that much money for the stuff that I picked up that weekend.
To cut it off as the most recent months, just so that it is easier to remember. And with Yu-Gi-Oh, they do actually release product pretty much almost every month now at this point. So I felt it was actually still a fair question to ask.
What time is the collab? The collab with Farfa is about to be in 15 minutes. I still don't know what exactly we're doing, but it's supposed to be in 15 minutes.
It's sealed product,
which means the video. Okay, in order to
do keep in mind again in terms of our audience that responded to the survey.
My favorite type of sealed product is reprint sets. Easily,
for those of us,
reprint
we definitely like reprint sets like Mega Tins, as well as like Battles of Legends sets, just because they give you those expensive staples and kind of provide a better accessibility for those cards. Structure decks are also always nice because oftentimes nowadays those
speed duel sets
can be used to become like meta decks, right?
You laugh, but speed duel sets are actually pretty pog. Because they just give you full, all the cards in one product. You don't have to gamba on anything. Like, the speed duel sets are actually broken. The only problem is no one really plays speed duels. But the speed duel sets, in terms of their designs, it goes extremely hard. Because you buy one of those sets, everything in it is guaranteed. Like, literally. There's nothing that is, shorted in speed duel. Nothing is really high rarity. It's glorious. It's very, very good.
Nice to have. And then core, maybe if I split the core side booster sets, the response could have been a little bit different, but nonetheless, the rest of the sets looks like there's not much of a preference. Now let's cover...
The neg is also guaranteed. How is it neg? If you genuinely enjoy speed duel, it's probably one of the cheapest hobbies out there, because they release a new speed duel box every couple of months, and you need to buy 3 of those boxes for how much is one box? 15 bucks? 20 bucks? So you need to spend 50 to 60 bucks every 3 months or some shit, and then you're good. That's it. Everything else you don't need.
Some questions as it relates to Konami and our thoughts on them. And so first question is our attitude.
And then some of the
Konami.
secrets even are expensive.
About half actually felt, it was quite negative or very negative attitude towards Konami. But 42% being around neutral. So
my attitude towards Konami as a company, as it relates to the Yugioh TCG, is very negative, neutral, positive, very positive. Okay.
They do have their flaws, right? Particularly, let's say, communication to the player base. That's always been a weakness of theirs, especially when it comes to ban list announcements, and as well as...
I don't know where I would rank myself. I think it's hard to evaluate Konami as an entire entity, right? I think there's a lot of things with Konami that I associate positively with. There is practices that I associate negativity with. yeah, it's very hard to give one specific answer for this, right? Because I know that they have a couple of employees that work really hard and care a lot about the game, right? And that's a very positive thing, right? There's a lot of people working at Konami that I have interacted with that I know they want nothing but the best for this game, and that's that. And then there's sometimes the things that they do to make money, which I'm not very happy about, and I don't think are the best for the game in general. So sometimes they do stuff that I view as negative. Overall, it's hard to make a statement on this.
Like some short printing as well, and some others. But you know what? I think we should also, despite the flack, we should also give them some credit, or at least maybe a lot of credit, because they did, in fact, are able to keep this game alive for this long and still maintaining a good amount of players participating in tournaments. Now, in terms of...
Right, that's another thing, right? Just the fact that the game has been going on for like 20 plus years is impressive in itself, right? And it's something that I am very thankful for.
Pricing at premier level events, this has been a hot topic recently, actually, and like a majority of the players do believe that the pricing is very, very low, and I think that's fair, especially when compared to the other TCGs where they actually have pretty good cash price.
That's an easy very low, like, yeah.
Pricing, and Yu-Gi-Oh does not have any form of cash pricing, and even the prize cards nowadays, if you could sell it, it has not been going for that high. And speaking of prize cards, essentially I would ask if it should be, a meta-relevant card or something like right now where it's just another plain vanilla kind of card. Most people do believe that it should not be a meta-relevant card. Now, something that was interesting that I saw in some of the comments was that they were asking if I meant meta-relevant as in, like an existing staple card, but just printed in some like new...
We've had this discussion before, Chat. There's literally a YouTube video on my channel about this. I'm not gonna
I never even thought of that. I
go into it again.
Hasn't happened yet, though. What I meant was more so like a new card that's meta-relevant, right? Something along the...
Do players get sponsored by Konami to go to Worlds or not? If you qualify, your travel is paid, if that's what you're asking. If you the players that qualify for Worlds get invited and paid their trip for and everything.
Lines of like Minerva or like that Chaos Emperor Pendulum card that honestly came out like maybe I think around 4 years ago as a prize card. So it was still, they were printing like meta-relevant prize cards like even pretty recently, but nowadays they're not. But it looks like at least most players feel that they should not be a meta-relevant card. Now, in terms of whether the lack of cash pricing is kind of like causing you to lose interest in playing competitively, it was actually very, very split evenly. I think for most of us, we're not one of those top players that we're traveling to every event, right? And so for us, like the cash pricing probably isn't making much of a difference in terms of whether we participate in these events or not. But for those top players who are committing and traveling and participating in all these premier level events, yeah, I could definitely see why it would definitely cause them to lose some interest. And, they definitely do deserve better pricing in my view. Now, in terms of, the frequency that the Konami releases the ban list, over half felt that it's not frequent enough. But you know what? A big chunk at 40% actually do feel that the way...
Bro, the ban list, I don't know how often I've said this already, but I don't care how often we get it. But just tell me when. Tell me when. I need to know whether I can prepare for a YCS or not, whether I, need to, like, I just want to know. Right? You don't even have to tell me the exact date, right? Don't tell me the exact date, but give me a time frame, right? Within a month. Just say the next one is happening in October or some shit like that. Right? Like the thing is, I do understand some of the reasons that have previously been, discussed as to why they don't want to settle on a specific date, right? I get it. Right, people are saying like, okay, but what if the meta is just fine in like when they say, okay, we do a ban list every 3 months on the dot, right, and then we technically don't need one at a certain point, right, and they committed to making one, but it's not necessary, right? Or there's a big problem in the game right now, but they need to like wait until the next date or whatever. Like I get it. It can be awkward, but I think there's so many better solutions to that problem rather than just like, we're not going to tell you when, right? You could just say, hey, we're making a ban list very frequently, like every 2 months. But if there's nothing that needs to be changed, we don't change anything, right? If there's like you get a ban list every 2 months, and if everything is fine, they just release a message saying no changes, right? Or only one change, right? Normalize, like they could normalize smaller ban lists or whatever. I actually don't think that in specifically 2023, I felt like most of the ban lists, like there hasn't been too many super bad formats in this year, right? It's been completely fine most of the time. So I think their ban list release schedule is completely okay. Even right now, arguably, it's okay that that we don't have a ban list yet, because the format is in an okay place. It's not a bad format. I think the problem is mostly communication. I think they need to communicate with us when we're gonna get the ban list, why we're not getting a ban list, right? Even right now, I'd be happy, well, semi-happy, but I'd be happier if they just said, I know you guys are expecting a ban list right now, but we've looked at the game and we think it's fine. We're gonna wait is to see the impact of Age of Overlord to reconsider a ban list or something. If they drop that message tomorrow, I'd be okay with that, right? I wouldn't agree with all of it, right? I would still be like, okay, but how are you saying it's okay when like anti-spell is in the format or whatever, right? I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but I would very, very much appreciate a statement like that, right? So that's that, right? Par for collab in 5 minutes. I know.
Right.
Don't worry.
There's like that tiny fraction thinking that's released too frequently. I'm not really
we're not
sure
gonna
about
make
that.
it
Maybe
through. We're
those are,
only
like,
halfway
the
through.
vendors who really want the market
Damn
to be
it.
a little bit more stable. Who knows? But interesting to see. In terms of the frequency of the ban list, optimal frequency rather, most actually believe it should be every 3 months, which is essentially what it is right now. For the most part, they do get released every 3 months. A couple lists prior though, they were actually released in 2-month intervals, which I actually kind of like, but I do think that perhaps if that constantly happens,
I think honestly between 3 and 5 months could be the perfect frequency for like decently large ban lists, right? 3 to 5 months could be like 3 months is sometimes a little bit too fast. 5 months, if there's a big deal, can sometimes, if there's a big problem, tier 0 deck that's way too powerful or whatever, 5 months can feel like it's a little bit too long. But probably 3 to 4 is all right.
happens, maybe that's not too good either. You know, whenever you have too frequent ban lists, and you know, it does get a little hard where, you know, can you really invest into a deck, or is it just going to be unplayable in like the next 3 months, right?
I do understand that sentiment as well, of like, I don't want a ban list every 2 months, because how am I ever going to invest in a deck and then it's going to be destroyed a couple weeks after? I understand that.
So there's definitely some pros and cons in terms of the frequency.
And there is a big difference here. There is a big difference here between the TCG and Master Duel, because investing in a deck in Master Duel is different than investing in a deck in the TCG, right? In Master Duel, you get some of your crafting points back, and it's much less. Every deck is the same cost basically in Master Duel, unless it has significantly more ultra rares. But like, you know what I'm saying, right? Every card, every ultra rare is the same price. Every super rare is the same price. It's very different than from the TCG, where if I invest into certain cards that are more expensive than others, if they get hit at another ban list, it's like, you know, it's a very different fear that you have, right? I've never been afraid of crafting a deck in Master Duel, because what if it gets hit on the next ban list, right? There's a difference when you do that in a TCG rather than in Master Duel, right?
Had that happen recently as well, and that honestly felt way too long. Hopefully we don't get to that level again. Okay, so now let's cover some questions related to just the Yu-Gi-Oh! Online simulator of choice. And so Master Duel has definitely overtaken as the number one by far at 50%.
That's interesting.
Prior to Master Duel releasing about a year and a half ago, it was definitely a dueling book at number one, at least among competitive players for sure. EDO Pro, YG Omega is still around a similar amount, and Dueling Nexus is also still there. It's definitely, I think, the easiest one to start with.
I mean, I gotta say, my favorite one is Master Duel as well, just because like it's by far my favorite like interface. It's so much more fun. Just looking at the fun of it, I think Master Duel is more fun than all the other like third-party thingies combined. Like I rarely play Dueling Book, and also just like on stream, it's like so much more chill to play Master Duel. Like for streaming, Master Duel is just phenomenal, and it is still a lot of fun, right? The only thing that's still, once again, my only gripe with Master Duel is the fact that I can't test for real life events. That is, in my opinion, the only downside really, is that I can't test on it. And I do like, I would like a testing ground for the TCG. But as a standalone game, I think Master Duel is way better than all the others. For sure.
with in terms of like new Yu-Gi-Oh players, for example. That's how I actually started playing Yu-Gi-Oh competitively, at least, or semi-competitively through Dueling Nexus, and a few in the other section, probably referring to something like, let's say, like Duel Links or maybe other Yu-Gi-Oh
Okay,
games.
we have a Farfra collab in a minute. We can finish this later.
In terms of how long players actually play on these simulators, most looks like, you know, anywhere between less than 3 hours or 4 to 10 hours per week. There is a small percent playing 30 plus hours per
Nimble Sprite with Ninja Mosquito is in Master Duel. I saw that this morning, actually. I saw that the Shadow Mosquito now is in Master Duel. We're going to experiment with that at some point.
week. That's essentially like a full-time job at that point. So you know what? Okay.
I know it's an Edison card, but I've only been playing for 3. Yeah, don't worry. I was just joking. It's one of my favorite cards. That's why I said that.
Committed there. So now let's cover some favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Online content from, you know, let's say YouTube or Twitch. And so the number one, again, is actually series videos. This essentially refers to something like, let's say, the most
favorite
normal
type
being
of
like
content
series by
that is one thing I'm lacking. I need a series, dude. I need something that's like recurring, you know, because like YouTube content is kind of just like, you know, I see myself as mainly a Twitch streamer. And then YouTube content is like just kind of on the side, right? We just make videos out of whatever happens. I feel like a recurring series could be pretty interesting. We'll see.
It is of course, sparked interest in terms of, you know, creating all kinds of different series out there. You know, Master Saga, there's like also Duel Night. So lots of really great Yu-Gi-Oh! Series content out there. Deck profiles definitely has always been probably traditionally the most common kind of content in Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's just so many other different kind of content. Like stream highlights is actually quite high now. You know, dueling book replays, let's say like the DB Grinder, for example. Meme videos, I guess that's a lot of things that Farfa does actually. Combo guides, lore is also really interesting to me as well, and a bunch others, and a bunch in the other category. Now let's cover the favorite YouTube/Twitch content creators online. And so we're going to cover top 15, and we're going to start with 15th, Nim Nim.
Gage.
Of course, well known for a lot of his, you know, let's say sealed only, like very high quality vlog content, and you know, great to see him posting a lot of videos again. We also have Lithium, tied for 15th,
what's up, guys?
Very well known for the Cross-Bandless Cup, and also essentially, you know, anytime any new cards are announced, I think you kind of flock towards Lithium's channel to learn what the new combos are going to be. Next, we have Pac, and so of course a very good player and a very good person. So you know, provides really strong competitive content that you should certainly follow him. He's obtained a lot of.
I will preface that I have
that
seen this on Farfa's stream yesterday, so I know where I know where we are.
Kind of similar to Nim Nim, kind of started.
Yeah, I've seen this.
You know, it's kind of like a sealed only kind of series, but just called.
So I'm not gonna act all surprised.
Really high quality content. Also provides a lot of combo videos as well. At least it relates to Branded, for example. So really fun to watch. And then we also have Hardleg Gaming. Recently, I think he's more so known for the Chaos drafts, basically, you know, just picking a card from all the different variety of packs throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history and dueling, and not really sticking to kind of like the meta, right? So
Josh first? There's no way you expect me to be first, right? There's no way.
We have the Duelogs, which perhaps is a little poetic because he is known for his top 10s, really highly edited videos. And if there was a contest for like the smoothest voice among YouTubers, I think this guy might be it. And then next we have Rada, who's very well known for, you know, like let's say his archetype archives, you know, going over these archetypes in depth, but also combined with his sense of humor. And then we have the DB Grinder, so really good for competitive content in terms of replays. I watch his videos a lot. Basically, I find if you're like me, who doesn't have a lot of time to watch,
I'm surprised by this.
A lot. What I do is actually just watch a ton
no
of
offense,
DB Grinder.
100%. I think DB Grinder makes good content. But I was surprised that he was this mainstream. I think this has something to do with the audience for the survey, I think.
Videos on like 2 times speed just to kind of catch up. It's almost kind of similar to like cramming for a final exam during school. Really helpful if you're kind of in like
DB Grinders. See, the thing is, I think DB Grinder is not very entertaining, but he's not trying to be entertaining, right? If someone is watching DB Grinder to be entertained, I think that's the wrong approach, right? People are watching DB Grinder just to stay in touch with what's going on in the metagame, right? I think that's all, and that's valuable content, right?
Next, we have tied for 7th, fellow Torontonian Kevin Distant Coder. Really congrats. He recently hit the 100K mark at the time of recording this video, so you know, huge congrats to him for his accomplishments.
DB Grinder unintentionally very funny. Yeah, I saw the video where he tried to pronounce different shit. It's great. It's phenomenal.
You know, exploding
the Oh Homie. We still use the Oh Homie. If in case you're wondering, me calling Mikanko Ohime the Oh Homie still dates back to a DB Grinder video. Like literally, that was a DB Grinder video we watched on stream, and he called it "Oh homie" on accident, and we've been saying that to this date. It's hilarious.
And then also tied at 7th is Simo, of course. You know, as I mentioned earlier, he is the creator of the Progression series, kind of like a pioneer of sorts of like all the kind of different series content that exploded afterwards from that. And so, you know, a big YouTube name for quite some time now, and most recently providing content on Master Duel Masochist, also a very fun series to watch. And so now let's just cover the top 5 content creators in a little bit more detail. And so we're actually going to start off with DZev, so the Alter Guy God himself, more recently known for his Master Saga as well as Master Roulette in terms of kind of like more draft-based, you know, Master Duel gameplay content. Really fun to watch, and also has been traditionally known to provide a lot of commentary in terms of, let's say, like certain decks or certain cards, you know, why they're good, why they're not good. So definitely well-deserved, and congrats to you, Doug. Next we have Luke Von Karma. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't follow Twitch content at all in general, so I'm a little bit lacking in that regard in terms of content knowledge, but I do know he's also on YouTube, and he's actually been exploding quite a bit actually, and so provides like really funny Master Duel content, so definitely go check him out. Next we have Joshua Schmidt.
Unironically, I was surprised by that, and I just want to say thank you guys so much, because when I saw people like Simo, DZev, Coder pop up in the thingies, I was like, okay, we're probably not even in it. Because how? There's no way we're like before these people, right? So, no, thank you so much, everyone. I do think this is partially because the audience for the survey was more like competitive than casuals. I'm sure there's like other, like if you had surveyed just like other people, you would have gotten other results, but still I'm very happy with this. Yeah, and thank you so much for that. Meebo Bell, thank you for the raid, appreciate that. Okay, this looks like I'm okay. No, we're not looking at ourselves in a ranking right now. That's not what we're doing.
Done a lot for me in terms of helping me grow my channel over the years. I definitely would not be here if it was not for him.
That's definitely not what we're doing.
A huge thanks to Farfa, and a huge congrats to Farfa as well for constantly being one of the most favorite YouTube / Twitch
Farfa's great
personalities. And then finally, the #1 favorite content creator for the 2nd year in a row actually is Mr. MBT Yugioh, Joseph Rothschild. So huge congrats to you.
I'm surprised by the difference between Farfa and MBT. That's twice as many votes. That is twice as many votes. I thought it would have been, you know, closer between the two.
Has done a lot for the Yu-Gi community, has provided a lot of interesting content, you know, most well known for his 10-minute testing, basically trying out a bunch of different decks, and honestly being able to commentate faster than probably anyone else possibly could, as well as, you know, Jank Bank, let's say, for, you know, a bunch of different Jank decks, and just a lot of different.
Where was that survey held? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yesterday on Farfa's stream, they talked about how it was, I think it was held mostly on Twitter, and MBT has a larger following on Twitter than Farfa. That's what they attested it to. I don't know. I think once again, this, for the most part, this portion is just to stroke egos of content creators, right? Like, for example, I'm incredibly proud to be mentioned in the top 3 after just being like streaming, creating content for like 1.5 years. It's something that makes me proud. But at the end of the day, I would have been proud of this regardless, even if I wasn't even included in this survey, right? Even without that, I'm incredibly proud of like the viewer numbers we're getting these days, the sub numbers, the amount of support, the amount of, you know, activity in chat, the people in my Discord, all that kind of stuff. You don't really need actual like these types of numbers for that sort of validation, right? It kind of circles back to what we talked about earlier with like achievements and stuff like that. Of course, I'm happy to see it, but I don't think someone like Farfa should just... What the takeaway for Farfa should not be, oh my god, I have less votes than MBT. This sucks. I'm pretty sure Farfa is still just appreciative of all the things that his community does and so on and so forth. I think it's just...
congrats to, honestly,
people are interpreting more into this than there is,
in the YouTubing or whatever Twitch.
Because people just love comparing themselves to other people for some reason.
Appreciation to all of you. And then finally, let's sort of kind of taper off this survey video now with just some fun related questions. You know, favorite Yu-Gi-Oh!
Who's your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist? Jaden. Yeah. If it's just the main protagonist, Jaden.
Protagonist, This is actually the same as last year.
Okay.
Essentially, Yusei, really from 5Ds being really.
I will say, Yusei. I haven't watched 5Ds, but I heard a lot of good things about 5Ds, which is maybe why I don't really have a connection to Yusei, because my favorite series as a child was I loved GX, right? GX was the time frame where I was at my peak anime consumption, you know. That was GX for me. So GX for me is that's my childhood, right? Like, it's like the main series as well, right? The original Yu-Gi-Oh as well, but like GX is when I was peak watching Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And I think that's why and I think the reason why so many of you like Yusei is because a lot of you are like a lot of other people that are just like a couple years younger than I am. I'm 28. Like 25-ish. I think what GX is for me, 5Ds is for them. So I understand. I get it, right? I get that. I understand that. I simply have never I've never gone back and rewatched or watched 5Ds. So maybe I would change my mind if I watched 5Ds. But GX is GX for me is like, that's my childhood main character, right?
Preferred favorite, as well as Jaden from GX. Yugi, the original protagonist, not getting that.
I'm 27 and 5Ds is the GOAT. I'm 31 and I think 5Ds is the best. Yeah, of course, exceptions like that are gonna exist, right? It's just that when 5Ds came out, I didn't actively watch the anime anymore. For me personally, you know, it's like yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Much love, honestly, and the rest of the anime characters really not getting any love at all for the most part. Now, in terms of the favorite DM characters, Monster is your favorite, and Blue Eyes does come out on.
Which Dark Magician, the Duel Monsters main character monster is your favorite? I haven't thought about this. It's not Blue Eyes, I don't think. Blue Eyes is like the mainstream. Nah, it's not. I was never a Kaiba kind of person. I always hated Kaiba. If it's only between those three, I think it's Red Eyes.
On top, followed by Red Eyes.
I think I'll pick Red Eyes.
That Yugi's ace monster is not as popular. Blue Eyes, I think, definitely makes more sense, you know, especially when you kind of look at like the pricing of some of these collector items that involve Blue Eyes. It's definitely always higher than the rest of these cards. And then also the favorite Egyptian god card. And
I wanted to pause it before. Okay. I would have gone Winged Dragon of Ra, I think. I would have gone Winged Dragon of Ra. I'm sorry, chat. I'm sorry. I would have gone Winged Dragon of Ra.
Slifer Yugi's monster actually comes out on top. This was definitely my favorite as well, watching it as a kid. I think, you know, Ra has always been like the least favorite, I think. It's just kind of not that interesting. Obelisk Kaiba, that was also really cool, but Slifer, I think, always looked the coolest. Now, in terms of the favorite special summon.
Okay. Favorite special summoning mechanic. Synchro, XYZ, Ritual and Fusion together, kind of, you know, cool. Link, Pendulum. Did I forget one?
Summoning mechanic, so Synchro being...
Synchro, XYZ, Fusion. Why is Ritual so low, dude? Are you guys out of your mind? I guess, okay, no, I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you because the most recent deck, when you think of Ritual, the most recent thing that comes to mind is Drytron, in which case I understand you guys. I feel you. When I think Ritual, though, I don't think Drytron, right? I think back to, like, Necros. That shit was based. But I guess I have to accept the fact that that's, at this point, like, 8 years ago, you know? I don't know. I have a sweet spot. I have a sweet spot for rituals, you know. I like Relinquished is also one of my favorite cards. Not my favorite card, but one of my favorite cards is Relinquished. Necros is one of my favorite decks of all time. I have a sweet spot for ritual, so I would have put actually the order is completely based. I just would have rated ritual higher. I don't like fusion as much these days. I think I would have put ritual before fusion even, but the rest is fine.
Really high. I guess that makes kind of sense. You know, it definitely was a pretty
Rituals are ass. It's not about which is the best. It's your favorite, right? It doesn't have to be a good mechanic. It's just if you have to choose if I have to choose a mechanic that I think is fun, not good, I like ritual.
interesting gimmick. And Xyz being also up there. Fusion being the first kind of like extra deck summoning mechanic from the original days, getting a decent amount of love. I'm kind of surprised Link was actually at 15%. I thought people really did not like Link summoning. I mean, we do have a lot of competitive players respond to survey. Maybe that might have a reason to do with it. But Pendulum, you know, pretty low. I mean,
okay, hot take, chat. I don't actually hate Link summoning. The only problem is, I think, with Links is that Links are very hard. Links, out of all these summoning mechanics, are the most generic one, right? Because theoretically, every monster can be used for a Link summon in any sort of combination, right? Like for Synchro, you need the tuner. For XYZ, you need the same level. For Fusion, you need the Fusion spell. For Ritual, you need the Ritual spell. For Pendulum, you need the scales. For Link summon, you don't need shit. You just need monsters, right? So it's like, it's very generic, which not necessarily a bad thing, right? But very hard to balance, right? This is the reason why the most banned extra deck mechanic on the ban list is Link monsters, right? Even if it's the newest one out of all of those, still most extra deck monsters on the ban list are Link monsters. It's because it's the hardest one to balance, because it's so generic, and specifically there are certain things they just shouldn't have done with Link monsters. The first thing is Link ones are very, very hard to balance because it lets you get any monster into the graveyard, which is not something you should do. Like just giving everyone the opportunity to get any monster into the graveyard at any point is not something they should do. Also, the fact that they give all of these Link ones just a random +1 effect is weird. And the second thing that I have had a problem with in the past is Link climbing. Link climbing, just so we're on the same page, you probably all know what it means, but Link climbing is when a Link monster summons another monster. Because what that leads to is it completely invalidates the entire Link mechanic. The entire value of a Link monster gets thrown out the window if you have Link climbing, right? Because the entire balancing of Link monsters is their Link rating, right? Their Link rating defines how powerful a Link monster should be. A Link 4 monster, in theory, should take 4 monsters because it's a Link 4. The problem is, when you have a Link 2 monster that summons a monster from the deck, you are turning 2 monsters into 3 monsters. And then when you have a Link 3 that summons a monster from somewhere, suddenly you can go from a Link 2 into a Link 3 into a Link 4, and that Link 4 that was designed with the idea that it's going to take you 4 monsters to summon, so it's a very powerful effect, suddenly, instead of having to actually invest those 4 monsters, you only invest 2, right? And that completely throws off the entire balancing around the mechanic. Do you know what I mean? Unless you put heavy restrictions onto the cards, right? So I would argue Access Code Talker is a very powerful card, but Access Code Talker is not the problem. The problem is the fact that like 2 monsters make Access Code Talker. Why? It's a Link 4. Why do 2 monsters make it? No idea. Doesn't make sense. So I think that's like that's one of the things, right? That bothers me with Links. So in general, I like the Link mechanic because I'm a big fan of like the extra deck being sort of a toolbox, right? I'm a huge fan of cards like Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus, Nightmare Unicorn, whatever, even IP Masquerena. Like, I'm a big fan of just generic utility. I'm not a big fan of like boss monsters that are part of your end board, like Appaloosa. But I do like the utility from the extra deck and the fact that you can turn a lot of monsters into that kind of utility. I think I'm a fan of. Marin says is okay in my opinion because it's very, very balanced out with specific restrictions, and it's really hard to abuse the link climbing from Marin says because you can only really go into that's your boss monster, right? You can only make that boss monster pretty much. You can't make any of the other, like you can't go into 1,000 directions with your link climbing. You can just, the goal of your deck is to summon that thingy, right? You summon the Argonaut or the other one, like that's okay, right? That's fine. Let them do it, right? Let them do it. That's all right. I think the problem, I have a much bigger problem with link climbing when it comes to Cyberse decks, for example, right? Like, and you guys chat, can you believe for a second that people called me a hypocrite for playing Salamangreat at locals, even though I was supposed to be the Cyberse hater? Dude, Salamangreat is not a Cyberse deck. I enjoyed Salamangreat so much more when there wasn't like Transcode Talker and shit like that, right? Like Transcode Talker, Splash Mage, I still have issues with, right? But Salamangreat is not just that, right? Yeah, just delete Cyberse from the game. Just delete Cyberse from the game, make Salamangreat Pyro, make Marincess Aqua, and we're all happier. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Realistically, I don't even think Konami likes pendulum summoning at this point, and Ritual almost always never really got any love. In terms of the favorite monster attribute, Dark comes out on top by far, which again kind of reflects how Konami has been treating it as well, because clearly they love Dark monsters, and I'm pretty sure if you were to...
What's your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monster attribute? Mine is water. Mine is water, simply because randomly, a lot of my favorite decks have water in it. Mermail Atlantean from 2013, 2014, banger deck. Frogs, absolute banger deck. Necros, holy shit. No, water is my favorite. Water is my favorite.
On all the different monster attributes, Dark probably comes out on.
Dark is such a standard answer, right? Dark is such a standard response to this. Such a uncultured opinion to have Dark as your favorite attribute.
On top by far. Now, finally, in terms of the favorite monster type, there's
same as Dragon.
a lot. There's actually like 20 plus, including the new Illusion type. But I'm only going to cover the top 10. And Dragon, again, another type that Konami clearly favors the most, definitely comes out on top. But you know what? Machine came out in second, which was actually my choice for a Cyber.
What's my favorite type? My favorite type? I don't know. I like Spellcaster. I'm not trying to think of a specific deck right now, because I could think of a cool deck for every type probably, except for Cyberse, if Salamangreat are Pyros. But I think the coolest vibes I'm getting, I like Psychic. Psychic is based. I like Pyro. That's very unpopular opinion, but Pyro is cool. I love cards like Volcanics, Volcanic Rocket, Volcanic Shell, Volcanic Counter, Royal Firestorm card. Dude, Royal Firestorm card is a cool card. It's a terrible card, but it's a cool card. I like that. So yeah, Pyro, Psychic, maybe Spellcaster, maybe Aqua. That's my kind of jam.
Dragons. So that's kind of cool to see. And you
Dragon Machine Warrior is just too mainstream,
actually some of the more newer types that still made it on here.
It's too mainstream.
So you know what? Pretty cool to see this kind of breakdown. Anyway, so that was it for the video. That was definitely a really long.
This was very, very interesting. Hakuna Matata. I'll share the link with you guys, chat. I'll share the link with you. Very fantastic channel. Does these types of things very frequently. Check him out. Smash that like. Let's go.